Sometimes you're fortunate enough to have neighbors who aren't interested in your daily business. They don't snoop, they don't peer through the curtains to spy on you, and they generally leave you in peace. That's if you're lucky. But there are some neighbors who have an uncanny knack for hearing everything that goes on in your house at all times of the day and night, whether you like it or not. This can be extremely annoying, but sometimes it can turn out to be absolutely hilarious. What if you were to hear a strange noise coming from your neighbor's house or apartment? Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Once, on a quiet day in December, a man was working on his car in his driveway. It was peaceful in the street where he lived, and he was going about his day with no interruptions. The house was located in the city of Lake Worth Beach in Florida. It's just 64 miles north of Miami and was named after a nearby lagoon. Jason Sprague and his wife of 25 years, Gia, moved to this up-and-coming city several years ago and had not encountered a problem since they arrived. But on this quiet afternoon in late December, Jason's neighbors were concerned about the noises coming from Jason and Gia's house. They didn't hesitate to pick up the phone to do what they believed to be the right thing. Looking back on it now, perhaps it would have made a different judgment call. According to the neighbors, they were alarmed to hear a voice repeatedly calling for help. The cries sounded panicked and distraught and seemed to be coming from a woman. Over and over again, the woman was pleading to be saved. As the neighbors walked out onto their lawn, they could make out the words she was screaming, and it was horrifying. "Help! Help! Let me out!" was being said over and over again. But Jason did nothing. He seemed totally unaware of the woman's plight. All they knew was that someone definitely needed saving, and it was their civic duty to call 911. In their minds, this was a matter for the police. The uniformed officers cautiously approached Jason's house and walked up the driveway, calling out their presence. He had no idea why they all looked so serious and why they were glaring at him so intently. He began to feel very nervous. What had happened? Had his wife, Gia, been hurt in an accident? Was one of his other relatives in danger? Jason knew that no one else was in the house as Gia had gone out for the day. The police informed him that they would need to find the source of the screaming and fully investigate the situation. As the police explained everything to him, Jason told them that the cries for help were definitely not coming from a woman being held captive. There was no one inside his house being held against their will. He asked the bewildered police to let him go into his backyard to prove that he was telling the truth. Jason wanted to go to the source of the noise and solve the mystery for the police and his concerned neighbor. Jason went to retrieve the screamer. "I'll bring the screamer out to you," Jason said. The officers didn't have to wait for long to see why Jason was confident that no one was in peril. After a brief moment, Jason returned to the driveway, but he wasn't alone. He had a bird perched on his hand, but this was no ordinary bird. This bright green and yellow bird was over 4 decades old and was a very intelligent creature. As he approached the police, who were waiting for a valuable explanation, their faces changed completely, going from dubitation to astonishment. Rambo is quite a rare breed of parrot, known as a yellow-naped Amazon parrot. He is extremely friendly and is considered to be a family member, having been in Jason's life for 40 years. He is usually a well-behaved bird, but Jason was now regretting teaching Rambo how to say certain words and phrases. When he was a youngster, Jason thought it would be amusing to teach Rambo some phrases to mess with his parents. Hour after hour, Jason would recite the same words over and over again until Rambo started to copy him. Over the years, Rambo learned more and more phrases from the mischievous teenager, but the ones that he pronounced the best were "help" and "let me out." His parents were none too impressed with the phrases Jason had taught Rambo, but there was nothing they could do about it. This Amazon parrot was proudly yelling out "help" and "let me out" whenever he was in the mood. Jason and his friends thought it was hysterical. 4 decades later, Jason is oblivious to most of what Rambo calls out, as he had heard it so many times before. It doesn't even register with him anymore. And the rest of the family reacts the same way to Rambo speaking. Jason's wife, Gia, also doesn't even hear it anymore. As the policemen took in what they were seeing and what Jason was saying, they all relaxed and instantly felt calmer. But they needed proof that Rambo was the screaming woman. So they asked Jason to get the parrot to talk. It was the only way to prove that Rambo was mistakenly thought to be the woman in peril. Jason looked at his beloved pet and asked Rambo to speak to the policeman. At first, Rambo stayed resolutely quiet. Finally, the parrot seemed ready to have a chat with the strangers in his driveway. He started with a friendly hello, before moving on to some of the other sentences in his repertoire. The voice coming out of the bird's mouth definitely sounded like a woman. Jason asked Rambo to repeat the two phrases that had started off all this drama. Sure enough, Rambo shrieked, "Help! Help! Let me out!" to all the officers. It was a verbatim match to the words heard by Jason's neighbor. Jason was no longer a suspect in a kidnapping case, and Rambo most definitely wasn't a female in danger. Thankfully, everyone at the scene could see the funny side of the situation, and even though it was a waste of police time, they were glad to know that no one was in any danger. No charges were filed, but Jason could totally see why his neighbors had been alarmed by the words Rambo was saying. Once the police had left Jason's house, they reported back to the neighbor about the source of the yelling, and that it had all been a simple misunderstanding. The officers then returned to the station to fill in the necessary paperwork. Jason knew what he needed to do as soon as he finished working on the car. Once he put the tire back on the Giz Mini and cleared away his tools, he took a stroll around the block with Rambo on his shoulder. He headed to his concerned neighbor's house and rang the doorbell. As soon as the woman opened the door, Jason introduced himself and his talkative parrot. Having already been told about Rambo by the police officers, Jason's neighbor had a big grin on her face and was able to laugh with Jason about the 911 call. Rambo had a little chat with the woman too, repeating some of his classic phrases and cheery songs. Jason knew that his neighbors did the right thing by calling the police. Animals are amazing, and sometimes they sense things that we as humans can't. Next up, read about how Stephanie Herfel's husky, Sierra, acted strangely and eventually saved her life.